Aloha, and how's it? Today we're talking all about how we can turn those cold conversations into new clients. So, more on that in a minute. How was your weekend? We had some fun size waves here, but not too much to write home about. It's still fun to get out in the water and also play with my two kiddos at the beach, especially with the holidays. I'm loving my new board. It's not this one. This one is actually, I don't think I've ever shown this board on the live yet. It's not this one behind me, but it's purple. So the purple board is a new one, and it's a really fun fish. So if you're not sure what a fish looks like, the tail, basically the tail of the board is kind of like this little fish shape, and it's perfect for those small mushy waves, especially during the off season here on the North Shore. And if you celebrated the holiday, I hope you had a beautiful time with friends and family. We kept it pretty chill here. We don't do anything too crazy, but it was really, really relaxing and fun. And in case you missed it, my podcast just launched this month. Woohoo! So we have now a total of 12 episodes up already. If you're a binge listener like me, okay, you're in for a treat. You can spend a full afternoon or weekend with me listening to these episodes, ranging from a day in the life of Mindy. So that was requested. I did it. If you want to know my day to day schedule, it's just released today. It's the latest one. To creating a business by design, to what it means to be an influencer, to becoming your own boss, to my sleep chronotype, if you want to know my sleep schedule. So go ahead and subscribe because I will be dropping a new episode every Monday. It's called the Mango Effect Podcast with Mindy Rosser. So if you just go to mangoeffect.com, you'll see it, all the episodes there. And now it is time for Mondays with Mindy. This is a weekly show on Monday afternoons if you're based here in the US, where I talk about all things LinkedIn pipeline, promo, and profiles, what I like to call the three P's of LinkedIn. So if you have questions about LinkedIn that you want me to answer, be sure to like this post, whether you're watching live or from the replay. Leave your questions below and I'll answer them either after the show or on a future episode of Mondays with Mindy. All of the next several weeks of live streams are questions that I have been asked, and I plan my entire content calendar around your questions. I want to help you succeed on LinkedIn, and sometimes it spans other channels, but LinkedIn is really what we're talking about here on Mondays with Mindy. So let's get to today's topic. How can you start turning those cold conversations on LinkedIn into new clients, especially as we're really solidly into quarter two? So, how are we actually making LinkedIn work for us and for our business? So, if you're struggling with what to say to that perfect fit client, that's a good thing. Like, Mindy, why is that a good thing? I should know exactly what to say. The easy way out is to just adopt the tactics of the salesy, the pushy, the aggressive sales types on LinkedIn. And I've even seen some people on the border of coming across as creepy when they start talking about things that are buried in my Facebook somewhere that they would have had to look very hard to find. So, personalization is important when it comes to our messages, but it needs to be just the right amount of personalization. So, jump starting a cold conversation on LinkedIn doesn't have to be complicated. I'll say that again. Jumpstarting a cold conversation on LinkedIn does not have to be complicated. The key is just acting like a real human being and not a bot. Being yourself. I mean, how simple is that? I believe that LinkedIn is the most powerful tool for us to connect one to one with our ideal clients and potential customers. And today we're going to talk about a few ways that you can start warming up people in your DMs and how these awesome conversations can actually turn into new business for you. More on that soon. And I'm going to show you my DMs. Like, I'm going to show you my messages. We're going to get real here today. So, aloha. For those who don't know me, my name is Mindy Rosser. I'm the founder of Mindy Rosser Marketing, and I have a group program called the LinkedIn Accelerator for those who want to go from 0 to 60 on LinkedIn with their profile and their network. And I will share the link at the end if you're interested and want to get on the July 2022 waitlist. We already have the next date, July, this summer. So I actually just hopped off our very first call with this April cohort inside the LinkedIn Accelerator, and we are already having a blast. It's such a great community. I think just learning from each other and working inside of a setting where you feel supported, you're not lost in a sea of faces. It's just amazing. It's an amazing feeling. So I help superstars who feel they are the best kept secret in their industry to become that go-to visible expert in their niche so they can get that next opportunity, grow their business, and scale their impact using LinkedIn. So in this live, we are going to talk about why you're struggling to turn those cold conversations with your perfect fit clients into new business opportunities, and how this is leading to LinkedIn feeling like a waste of time, and what you can do now to start booking more clients to make the rest of 2022 your most exciting year yet. Are you ready? Let's do this. This is one of the most common questions I get. Mindy, how do I actually turn my LinkedIn connections into new business? How do I actually find my perfect prospects and get into conversations with them? I feel weird. I don't know what to say. There's so many questions around this. So go ahead and like this post, whether you're live or watching from the replay, to give it some social love. So one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people make, especially when they get started on LinkedIn, is getting into conversations with their ideal prospects. Is that they really start treating LinkedIn messages like they would an email campaign or outreach. Like we are so stiff with how we approach our messages. We feel like it has to be crafted. We need our intro. We need our next message. We need our this is about me message. So we get so caught up in the sequence that we forget that this is actually a one-to-one conversation. This is not an email campaign that's going out to a mass list of people. This is a one-to-one conversation, and we have to treat it as such. It is very, very different from email campaigns. So what tends to happen, especially if we're unsure what to say, is we craft this perfect sequence of messages and then we stick to the sequence. So we don't adjust after messages based on the direction the conversation is going. We just stick to the script, okay, I'm going to send this message, then this message. I want conversions after this message, conversations after this message. And you know what? It feels really boring. People know what you're doing. It feels like a sequence. Nobody on LinkedIn wants to get thrown into a sequence. And do I teach sequences and what to say? Yes, I do teach it. But the caveat is that the sequence has to actually be a framework that you're adjusting along the way. So the sequence is guiding you so you don't feel stuck with what do I say next, but it's not to be followed to the letter. So it takes a lot of practice to get your follow up and your messaging just right. I'm not going to lie here, but you've got to start somewhere. And it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. But today we're going to try to avoid some of those mistakes to make it a little easier on you, especially as you're getting started. So some typical sequences I see kind of flow like this. Tell me if this sounds familiar. I'm an expert in. Look at all of my amazing accomplishments. I solved this problem. Then would you like to chat about this problem? I assume that you have. Great, here's my calendar. Then why didn't you respond? Let's chat again. Here's my calendar again. I guess you're not interested in, but in case you know somebody who is, here's my calendar. Like, okay, right? It's very, very frustrating. Being on the receiving end of this is annoying as heck. And a lot of times we wish they would just stop. Like, would you just stop and talk to me like a human? Like, I'm a real person on the other end of this. I don't want your sequence. I want you. And I think that's really, really important to pay attention to. On LinkedIn, people don't care how well worded your sequence is. They want you as a real human to respond. They want it to sound like you. They don't want it to be this pretty sequence. They want to chat with a real person. So there's definitely a lot of nuance to reaching out on LinkedIn. In emails, when we opt in to someone's list, we expect to hear a bit more of their backstory about me, about my business, about my services, blah blah blah. These old ways at how we start conversations via email often affect how we reach out on LinkedIn in a negative way. So the thing is, on LinkedIn, people don't care about all that backstory. Why? Because they can go look at your profile. If they're curious, they can go see all of that backstory on your profile. And if you've done a good job with your LinkedIn profile, you don't have to get into all that backstory in your messages. So, unless they specifically ask for details, avoid the backstory. They want to know one thing: who are you as a person from that professional point of view? So, who are you as a person from a professional point of view? This is something that I learned after moving to Hawaii. On the mainland, when I was in the Chicagoland area. It was very industrial. We were all professionals, right? And people always led with questions like this: what do you do? That's the first question. Everybody on the mainland. Anytime I went to a party, anytime I was at the gym, anytime I met someone new, what do you do? And I felt like in that moment, they were always trying to like categorize me and see where I fit on their hierarchy of people inside of their who they know network. And it is really different. So I was so accustomed to that, though. I was so accustomed to being categorized by what I did that everybody always knew what I did for work. Then when I moved to the island here, people want to know, who are you? That's the first thing. People want to know, who are you? And how long have you been here? Like, people want to know, are you military? Are you not military? Have you been here? Do you understand the way of things on the North Shore of Oahu? So that's the first step before they ever ask what you do. They don't care. They don't care what I do. I would say that most people that I see out and about that are not very close friends, they have no idea what I do. They think I'm a surfer. They think I just surf and I live, and it doesn't matter. And they don't care. And I don't go around telling them, Here's what I do. Let me talk about this." So when I applied this same principle to how I approach LinkedIn, instead of leading with, "I'm a LinkedIn social selling expert. Do you have any LinkedIn questions for me? I'm happy to be a resource." I noticed that I started getting way more two-way conversations with people because I wasn't talking about myself. They don't they already know what I do. If they really want to see it, they can go look at my profile. They don't need me to repeat it. They don't need me to pat myself on the back that I'm a LinkedIn expert. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Talk to me. That's all an aside. What they did care about was the fact that I paid attention to their message and that I responded like a human, that I actually saw it in close enough real time. Sometimes I don't catch them within 24 to 48 hours like I teach, but I responded and I acknowledged them and wanted to know more about them. And so, not shifting the focus on me, really focusing on them. And all you need to do in your LinkedIn messages, if you want to turn those conversations into clients, all you need to do is you need to have a back and forth conversation. So your goal is to get the person to keep responding, keep talking to you. And that back and forth is going to lead to new business opportunities. Not every time, but when you're in the habit of, all I need to do is get them to respond again, especially if it's a perfect prospect. If it's not, let it go. Don't waste your time. But if it's a perfect fit client for you or somebody that you can help in some way, shape, or form, keep that conversation going. People want to know that you are human and that you respond like a human. Nobody wants to be hit with a message that feels like a really clever marketer wrote it. So, why are we still hiring expensive social selling consultants to create these messages for us? Why are we still using people's templates? Because we don't trust ourselves. Think about that. We don't trust ourselves. Don't trust ourselves to have that conversation. We don't know what to say. So, that trust in yourself that you know what to say and how to say it is what's going to make you successful on LinkedIn. You have to trust yourself and trust that you have the words, that you know exactly what your audience needs, that you can help the people you are here to serve. So, yes, I do help people craft messages, but I think it's more important that their personality and how they would say things comes across than anything clever that I could come up with. It's not about the timing. It's not about, okay, you're sending it in the morning or you're sending it on a Friday. It's really about you and you as a human, you connecting with another human being on a professional level. So, this is a one to one conversation between you and your perfect client. And you cannot outsource that conversation completely, contrary to what a lot of LinkedIn experts tell you. So you have to treat your conversations as one of the most important aspects of your business development strategy because it is. Those conversations lead to Zoom calls that lead to potentially working together or referring you. And that's where it all starts on LinkedIn. So, how you communicate with new customers is the lifeblood of your business pipeline. It really is. Your communication and learning how to communicate in a way that resonates is critical. So, if you haven't figured this out yet, that's okay. You don't have to be a pro. Like, unless you grew up in sales and marketing and have spent the last decade in those areas, you're probably going to struggle a bit, and that's all right. It's really about figuring out your own voice and where you fit and how you feel best communicating with your people. That will come across. You don't have to be the snazziest marketer or the best, high converting salesperson out there to make LinkedIn work for you. The key is you want to start by sending a few LinkedIn connection invitations. Just start a couple cold conversations like a human to see what happens. And you may be pleasantly surprised about the response you receive when you kind of throw away all that stuff we're taught about, oh, it has to be a conversation that leads to a call. Uh, It's like, why don't you just have a conversation and how can you help each other? Like, I noticed you posted something really cool. Let's talk about that. I mean, there are so many ways that we can get into conversations that are not sales related. It's thinking outside the box just a little bit. So you say, okay, Mindy, I get it. I need to be the one to start these conversations that's going to lead to me getting more clients. But I have no idea where to start. So, first, you're going to be human. So, remember, we've talked about this already today, but you're going to be human first. Be yourself. When you meet someone in real life, how do you tend to start that conversation? Think about it. When you meet somebody new, what do you tend to say? Maybe you're an introvert like me. Contrary to popular belief, I really am an introvert. And you have to see someone like a dozen times before you say anything. That's me. Like in real life, if you meet me out in the water, I'll probably watch you and like really pay attention. I'm definitely an observer type before I ever say anything. But guess what? That's okay. That's okay. I'm one of those surfers who doesn't say a word, especially when I'm at a new spot. But I will study the lineup and I will look at people I don't recognize. And then if they look interesting, I will wait to say something and, comment and say, that was a good wave. Or, oh, how was the weather today? Isn't it a gorgeous day? There's always like something that can kind of break the ice into that conversation. So, as we're applying that to LinkedIn, what does that look like for you? What can you say that feels natural enough to you, but helps you get into that conversation? It's very much like how I would say reading the lineup as a novice surfer. So, if you're unfamiliar with surfing, I'll explain a little. When you are surfing, especially in a new spot, and you don't know where to sit. So, when I'm saying where to sit, where to position yourself in the water. Do you sit on the inside, the outside, go wide? Like, where do you sit in the lineup? The key is you have to, before you paddle out, paddling on your board, you have to look at the lineup and figure out, okay, based on my skills, based on how much surfing I know, based on what I know about this break, based on the waves out there, based on the people out there, where should I sit? And the same applies to LinkedIn. When you are approaching LinkedIn, you're looking at all of those different prospects, all of those variables. You have to figure out where you fit into that picture. And that's where you go. And so, as it applies to messaging, it is key that you approach it in a way that feels good to you. For example, I wouldn't go sit out where the advanced surfers sit on a big day and the waves are like, 10-foot faces. And I'm not going to drop in on those. So I'm not going to go sit over there. I'm going to go sit where my skill set is best used, which is the smaller stuff, the leftovers, the shoulders, where I can practice. So figure out where you fit. You don't have to go for the big prospects right now. Start practicing and warming up with other prospects or people that you can feel comfortable reaching out to at the beginning. And keep in mind that less is more. It's not about sending a bazillion connection invitations. It's not about always being in your messages. It is really about being thoughtful about what you do say. You don't have to write long messages, they can be short. You just have to kind of start playing in your LinkedIn messages. That's my key. And what I want to encourage you today is start playing in your messages. Like respond like a human. Stop putting on your like super selly hat or super marketing hat or I'm a super expert hat and just start being a human. Like, hello, hi, fellow human. What are you interested in? Do our interests align? What are you working on? I would love to hear about it. So, here are some responses that I tend to notice. If you're thinking about, okay, what messages I receive and what are those signals that tell you where the conversation is going or is not going. So, here are some responses I tend to notice. One of them is, thanks for connecting. No further communication necessary. So there are going to be a lot of people that fall into that category where you are just getting connected and there's really nothing else left to do. You just kind of leave it at that. So in that you're reading that signal and you're saying, "Okay, I don't need to send the rest of my sequence. They're not really interested. That's a waste of my time." There are also people who will say immediately, they'll say, "What do you sell? I might be looking for someone like you." In that case, that is a prime opportunity for you to be very thoughtful in how you approach your response. You don't want to pitch them and send them every single thing that you offer with your price points. You really want to kind of suss out the situation and see how serious they are and how quickly they want to get started. So you see, there's a lot of nuance when it comes to messages. Other people will respond with something like, "How did you find me?" That's a common one that I get, especially if they can tell that I was kind of clever with how I went about finding them and I reference something that could be like I've really done my homework, maybe sometimes a little too well. So then they will ask how I found them. And so that actually opens the door for a really fun conversation about that. Some other people just want to talk shop. and they love meeting new people. Others want to hop on a quick Zoom with you. And so if you are open to that, then boom, there you go. You got a conversation happening right then and there. So others want to tell you all about themselves. I've gotten those too, where it's like, oh gosh, you just sent me like 3 paragraphs about yourself. That's fantastic. Okay, great. What do I do with this? So basically, you as the recipient of these messages, whether you initiated or you're responding to somebody who initiated the message, it's your goal to keep them talking. If they are a good client for you, if they would be a good person to have in your network, keep them talking. And you want to use that knowledge of, like we talked about earlier, reading the lineup to craft a response that lets them know that you did your homework and that you belong in their network and you belong in their messages. When you can get that across, where it just feels like a natural thing. Oh, yeah, Mindy's in my network. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've talked about this and this. Whether they buy from me or whether they don't, whether it's later or whether it's sooner, whether they refer me, it's all good. It's all leading back to growing my business and growing my network. All right, so that's all it takes. I know it sounds simple. Some of you are like, this is too simple, Mindy. Just be a human, respond to my messages, read between the lines, and stop using my automated sequences. Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. But it takes time and you do have to practice this. It is a practice. So some people just want a quicker approach that just brings all these people to them and requires no emotional or mental output to cultivate that relationship. This approach can work at some level, but never to the degree that will consistently turn those cold conversations into new business opportunities. So it is key that you pay attention, that you read, that you respond like a human. So I know some of you are like, Mindy, show me what this actually looks like. So I'm going to share with you some of my messages so you can see what happens in my DMs and how exactly to respond to messages. And you can see that it's not all salesy and pitchy. So I'm going to share my screen here so you'll be able to see it. All right, so you should be able to see some of my messages. I'm going to make it a little bigger. I think that's a little easier to see. So if you're scanning through my messages on a typical day, this is what you're going to see. Like this first one, somebody's asking for a referral and they want, somebody that I recommend. So we're going back and forth. So you can see that's not a salesy, pitchy message. There are others that I have muted, and I do mute conversations if they're annoying or someone throws me into a group chat. You'll see there are other ones where I have just reached out and I asked a question and I'm still waiting for the response. So the person has accepted my connection and now it is time to kind of take that conversation further. Do I push it and send them another message? Nope. I wait for a response. I wait for them to say something back that shows that they're interested. Otherwise, I just assume like, okay, cool, we're connected. That's good enough. We'll just leave it there. This one is more of a back and forth. We're talking about a post. I was really impressed with something that he posted on LinkedIn and I wanted to share it with my students. So you can see this is a very natural and human conversation. It is definitely not salesy. It is not pitchy. And it is not something that I feel compelled to like send all my services and pitch things here. It is really just natural conversations. And you'll see like some of these stretch all the way back to like 2021, 2022. It is just an ongoing conversation with my network. And to me, I'd rather have deeper conversations and with people that I want to work with than trying to convert as many people as quickly as possible, because all roads lead to working with me in some way. That's how I see it. Every single conversation that I have, every single thing that I'm responding to leads to somebody having a good feeling about me and working with me, about my knowledge, about something I shared. And that's where all roads lead to, okay, yeah, Mindy's a good person to have in my network. And you'll see, it's like, okay, she actually answered the question. So I will respond to her with like, oh, great. That sounds interesting. She didn't ask a further question, but I will respond within a day or so to say, hey, this is awesome. I'm great to be connected with you. So you can kind of get an idea of just like my style and how I go about reaching out to people. I try to make sure that it feels very, very natural. We connect from other places and we share ideas, but see, it's not like I'm sending big, long, drawn out sales messages. It's really about, okay, sharing ideas, and people will send me things saying, have you seen this post? What do you think of this on LinkedIn? So that's just a sampling of what's inside my messages and how I approach them. It's very natural, it's very human, and I love connecting and deepening my relationships with my network. All right, so let's talk about, okay, Mindy, let's make this a little practical. So let's talk about 3 ways that we can turn those cold conversations into hot Zoom calls. All right. So, when we are thinking about creating a high converting outreach message, or what do we say in response to people, first of all, you want to think about how many conversations do you actually want to have. And sometimes we say as many as possible. That's usually what I get. I want to have tons of calls. I want my entire schedule filled with calls. Think about that for a moment. Do you really? Do you really want to have that many calls with people? The key is you want to figure out exactly who your perfect fit clients are. And then you need to think about how you respond to them and how that actually leads to a conversation. And when you think through this whole process, like how are they finding out about you? How do they get into the DMs with you? What is piquing their interest? Then you will know the angle that you can approach your message. And then also, how many of these conversations do you want to have each month? And I feel like when you have an idea, for a lot of people I talk with, they like to have, about a call a week or thereabouts. Like one sales call a week feels doable, especially if you're an expert, if you are a solopreneur, if you are trying to get, retainer clients, then you may not need to have as many calls as somebody who is selling a product or a SaaS application or something like that. So keep that in mind. How many conversations do you actually want to have? Because if it's fewer conversations, you can have better conversations and you don't feel like you're under the gun and feel pressured to have a bazillion conversations in a month. It's like, okay, one per week would be great. That would average about 4 to 5 conversations per month with your ideal clients. And if you're closing one or two of those, that should be a steady flow of business for a lot of people. All right. So then you want to think about number two, how do you respond to keep the conversation going? So we talked a little bit about this earlier. Like, okay, respond like a human, no automated sequences. If you're going to use a sequence, use it as guidance, not as word for word. You always want to know your target audience and what they actually respond to. So once you start paying attention, once you actually start messaging, you will notice like, okay, when I say this, I get a good response. When I say that, they just disappear. So pay attention to that little bit of feedback when people don't respond. And you can tell, especially if you can tell that they saw it or they were responding back and forth and then all of a sudden they stop. There's something that caused the stopping. And you have to figure out what that is. It could be that they just got busy. That's fine. But a lot of times there's something a little bit more. So pay attention to the responses and how can you respond? Which responses that you send tend to get really good engagement. Start paying attention and experimenting. Experiment with different things to figure out what works for your audience and your people because you are going to be very different in how you respond than everybody else in your industry. You are a unique person. And so embrace that uniqueness. All right. So, number three and final point for today, how do you refine your process to get more conversations? So it's like, okay, Mindy, this is great. I need to know how many conversations I want to have. I've got to figure out how to get people to keep talking. How do they respond to keep the conversation going? And then you need to refine your process. So you're paying attention throughout the entire process. So here's how I recommend it. If you want to test this, you're like, Mindy, I want to test this. What I would recommend is that you research 10 to 20 people that are perfect fit prospects for you. So you find them on LinkedIn and then you test your messaging over the course of 30 days. So these 10 or 20 people, for 30 days, you are paying attention to their responses. They're not responding. They're responding positively or negatively. And then you're going to measure your results to see which ones worked the best. So if your sales process, conversations like getting people booked on a call with you takes longer than 30 days, you may need to, stretch out this experiment a little longer. But I find that for most people, 30 days is a really good measure of if people are responding, how they're responding, in what ways, and what can you learn from their responses and the conversations. So then you're going to figure out a cadence that is going to work well for you. So you kind of iterate. You look at what your initial take on your messaging, and then you're going to iterate on that messaging and figure out what you need to do to get the number of conversations that you need to have to fill your sales pipeline. So if you're shooting for one call a week, how many open conversations do you need to have to get that one call a week? And for some of you, that may mean a lot of conversations. For many of you, if you are very targeted and strategic and you are like the expert in your niche, that may not be a ton of open conversations. So it's going to take some doing, it's going to take some playing and experimentation. But over the period of 30, 60, 90 days, you are going to understand which levers to pull to get people to respond, to get those conversations into Zoom calls. So moving from the LinkedIn DMs to a Zoom call or whatever that next step is in your sales process. And be patient with yourself. Once you get into a good rhythm with your outreach, you just rinse and repeat. Like once you find a good rhythm, like I found a good rhythm for my messages, and my LinkedIn messages are not stressful. Like it's very easy for me to respond naturally. I'm not hard selling. I'm not under pressure. I'm not trying to close deals in my DMs. It is really a place for me just to get to know people and get that conversation started. So, in conclusion, turning cold conversations into new clients on LinkedIn can really be as simple as you want it to be. It's all about responding to your messages in a way that works for you and generates the results that you want. And I'm curious, like how many of you are actually paying attention to your messages in this way? I'm sure a lot of you are because I talk to a lot of you. So I know, and it's really awesome to me to be able to have those discussions with you. It's like I love connecting with people in the DMs. I don't have time to hop on Zoom calls with everyone, but I do have time to pay attention and have those back and forths in my messages. So I'm curious how you're using your LinkedIn messages and if you feel like they are of value to you. Feel free to share your take in the comments. And if you have additional questions about this topic in particular, please leave it in the comments. If you want to reach out to me via LinkedIn message, via a DM, we can discuss it there as well. I love diving into this and figuring out what works for each other and how we can support each other on our LinkedIn journeys. So if you're looking for that extra edge to get you started on the right path with LinkedIn, to start booking all of these perfect fit clients, get on the waitlist for the next LinkedIn Accelerator. Our cohort is kicking off in July. I'm really excited about the summer cohort. It's going to be awesome. It is tailored to take you through all of the sections on your LinkedIn profile in just 5 days flat. So it's 1 week and you're off to the LinkedIn races to start growing your network and getting conversations. Get on the wait list, and I hope to see you next week on Mondays with Mindi. In the meantime, feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and my inbox is always open if you want to message me directly. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye for now.